Yoma Daf Gimel. Today's email comes from Yosef Bayit. He says, "My son Shmuel Yitzchak Mordechai, who is 11, learned Mishnah Yoma, really wanted to start Daf Yomi with Gemara Yoma. I told him I think that if you listen to your shir, you get a better understanding of the Gemara. As a condition, he told me that I would have to listen to your shir too. I was doing Daf Yomi by myself and through other Maggid Shurim, so I just wanted to let you know you have two new members of the Mishpacha. All the best, Yosef Bayit Hatzlacha G'dayla should be zoicha to finish Shas together with your son." As we were discussing yesterday, from the pasuk of Milui, the inauguration of the Mishkan, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Aaron and his sons, you have to sequester for 7 days. And from that pasuk, the Gemara learns there are another two areas in the Torah that you have to sequester for 7 days: Yom Kippur and Paraduma. We learn Yom Kippur from the word lechaper and Paraduma from the word la'asos. Now the Gemara says, how do we know that lechaper is referring to Yom Kippur? Perhaps lechaper is referring to Shmini Atzeres. Shmini Atzeres is 1 day, just like Yom Kippur is 1 day. And just like Miluim is 1 day, and the 7 days of sequester, so it fits right in. Shmini Atzeres, who says it's Yom Kippur? So yesterday we had an answer from Rav Ashi that doesn't make sense, that the entire Sukkot, the 7 days before Shmini Atzeres, doesn't require the Kohen to be harush and leave his house and his wife, yet the final day of Shmini Atzeres does require. But the Gemara today says, even according to the Man Omer that says that Shmini Atzeres is a chag b'fnei atzma, it's its own yom tov. Sukkot has no relationship to it. So it makes a lot of sense. Now it's similar to Miluim, just like Miluim is 1 day. So Shmini Atzeres, no connection to Sukkot. Says the Gemara, even according to the Man Omer, Shmini Atzeres is in fact part of Sukkot. The only thing is, Shmini Atzeres has its own yom tov for 6 things, and the Rosh Tevis are Pizar Kishav. Pizar Kishav stands for pious, which is a lottery, a goyrel, and that is, whereas the 70 parim of Sukkot, the first day of Sukkot, we bring 13 bulls, and the second day 12, and it goes down to 11, etc. Every day one more, 70. There's a lot to go around for the Kohanim to perform the Avodah. There's no requirement for a goyrel. But on Shmini Atzeres, there's only 1 bull, and for that, we have to do a pious. The Zayin stands for Zman, which is a special bracha of Shechiyanu that we make on Shmini Atzeres. Reish stands for Regel. It has a name, Shmini Atzeres. Kuf is for Karban. It has a different amount of animals, like we said, 1 par, 1 ayil versus 13, 12, 11 in terms of the Karbanos. Shir, it has its own shir shal yoim. Rashi says we're not really aware of what that shir is, because it says perhaps it's Lamanasech al Shminis, that they said in Shul, and maybe that's what they said in the Beis HaMikdash. And finally, the Beis stands for bracha. They gave a bracha blessing to the king on Shmini Atzeres. However, Shmini Atzeres is still part of Sukkot. So if somebody forgot his Karban Chagiga on Sukkot, he could bring it and be mashlim it on Shmini Atzeres. Perhaps the pasuk L'chaper is referring to Shavuos. Says the Gemara, it can't be Shavuos because the Miluim only had 1 ayil, 1 ram, and Shavuos has 2 elim. Even according to the Mandama that says Yom Kippur has 2 elim, so then there's no difference between Shavuos and Yom Kippur. Why do we pick Yom Kippur? The answer is because one of the elim on Yom Kippur is for Karban Musaf, and one of them is for Chayvas Hayayim. Whereas on Shavuos, both of the elim are for Chayvas Hayayim. Perhaps the word L'chaper is referring to Rosh Hashanah, which is also Midaraisa only 1 day, and it's just like Yom Kippur. Why do we pick Yom Kippur over Rosh Hashanah? The Gemara says because according to everybody, the Karbanos of Yom Kippur come from the Kohen Gadol's pocket, whereas the Karbanos of Rosh Hashanah come from the communal pocket. Abba Chanan says, when it comes to the building of the Aron, which contain the Luchas, there seems to be a contradiction in the Psukim. On the one hand, the pasuk says Va'asu, that Klal Yisrael builds the Aron. On the other hand, it says Va'asisa in singular. And the Gemara says, Abba Chanan says, it depends. It really comes from the funds of Klal Yisrael. If Klal Yisrael does the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then it's considered as if Klal Yisrael built it. And if not, it's considered as if Moshe built it. But according to everybody, Miluim and Yom Kippur, since the Torah repeats itself and sort of seems like a contradiction and says, you should do in a singular, the Torah is saying that the Kohen himself has to pay for the Miluim, the Kohen himself has to pay for the Korbanos and Yom Kippur. Rav Ashi has another explanation. Why the pasuk, the Chaper, is referring to Yom Kippur, Kapara, Yom Kippur, and not for Rosh Hashanah and Shavuos, says Rav Ashi, because when it comes to Yom Kippur, it's similar to Miluim. One is a Chatos Karban and one is a Oila Karban, just like Miluim. But when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, both of the Karbanis are Oila. Ravina says that Miluim was performed by the Kohen Gadol, by Aaron and his sons. And so to Yom Kippur, we know that only the Kohen Gadol could perform the Avodah. Whereas Rosh Hashanah and Shavuos, any Kohen can perform the Avodah. Therefore, the pasuk cannot be referring to Rosh Hashanah and Shavuos, it must be referring to Yom Kippur. Another shot in Ravina, another Lashon, is that just like Miluim was the very first time in history that they performed Miluim, so too Yom Kippur was the very first time that Kohen Gadol went into the Kodesh Kodashim to perform the Avodah. Whereas Rosh Hashanah and Shavuos is not so. However, there's a machlokes in general. When the Torah says kach lecha in singular, v'asisa lecha, when it's referring to the spices of the Torahs, or the chatzotzros, the trumpets, is the Torah telling the Kohen to build the trumpets with his own money? Or perhaps lecha is referring to the communal chest? Rabbi Yochanan argues with everything we said up until this point that the pasuk by Miluim teaches us two things. Rabbi Yochanan says no, the pasuk in Miluim is only talking about Yom Kippur. The fact that there's a Mishnah, a Masechtas Parah that tells us that when the Kohen performs the Avodah on the Parah Aduma, he must sequester for 7 days, that's only L'mayla, since we show sort of a zilzal in Parah Aduma. We're metama the Kohen on purpose. We have to show that Parah Aduma has a chumrah to it, but not that Midai Raisa the Kohen has to sequester. Rish Lakish takes issue with Rabbi Yochanan, who learns Yom Kippur from Miluim. If you're going to learn from Miluim, it has to be exactly like Miluim. And just like Miluim, they were mafresh another Kohen. He had to leave his house, so too by Yom Kippur, that other Kohen, the designated one, should have to be mafresh, not just misakin, not just think about him. Well, Rish Lakish himself doesn't learn Yom Kippur from Miluim. Rish Lakish himself learns Yom Kippur from Matan Torah. Just like Moshe Rabbeinu had a sequester for 6 days, so too by Yom Kippur. But we add a 7th day, just in case, for the very far remor chashash, that the Kohen would have relationships with his wife while she's a nida, and that would make him tummy for 7 days. Have a wonderful day.